What if I told you that the Bible we all know might be missing crucial details about creation, the lives of the patriarchs, and even God's own laws? The Book of Jubilees, preserved in the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible, claims to fill in the gaps, revealing hidden stories and offering a deeper insight into God's divine plan. But here's the issue. This book has been banned in most of the Christian world. Why? In today's video, we will explore the mysterious Book of Jubilees, also known as Little Genesis, and find out why its 50 chapters were excluded from the mainstream Christian Bible. This ancient text holds lost details of the Genesis story, giving us a cosmic perspective on how angels, heavenly time, and hidden commandments were passed down to humanity. But the book goes even further. It even claims that the calendar most of the world follows is wrong, and that time itself was given by God in a sacred structure that few follow today. So why was this ancient text rejected by the early church? What secrets does it hold that were considered too controversial for mainstream Christianity? The Book of Jubilees begins by retelling the creation story we know from Genesis, but it goes far beyond what most Bibles include. According to Jubilees, when God created the world, he didn't just bring life into existence, he also established the very structure of time, arranging it according to his divine order. This is where the concept of sacred time emerges. Unlike the traditional calendar most of us follow, the Book of Jubilees introduces a precise solar calendar overseen by heavenly angels, governing the cosmic cycles of the universe. This isn't just about counting days, it's about living in perfect alignment with God's will. Jubilees claims that humanity was meant to follow this divine calendar, consisting of 364 days, divided into 4 seasons, each exactly 91 days. This structure ensures that holy days like the Sabbath and festivals always fall on the correct days, a perfect system that the rest of the world has forgotten. In Genesis, the story begins with the creation of the earth, but Jubilees gives us a bigger picture. Before the world was formed, angels were created on the first day of creation. These angels play vital roles in governing the universe, including regulating time and seasons. The Book of Jubilees reveals that these angels were assigned specific tasks by God, some overseeing natural phenomena like the movements of the heavens, while others acted as messengers and guardians of God's laws. The idea of angels controlling the skies is something we also see in other ancient texts, but the Book of Jubilees emphasizes how these angels help maintain cosmic order, ensuring that the sun, moon, and stars follow their divine paths. For God appointed that the sun should keep its course according to the division of the seasons, Jubilees 2:9. These angels were not only guardians of humanity, they controlled the very structure of time. And when humans no longer aligned with God's time, it would lead to chaos, a central theme throughout the Book of Jubilees. One of the most controversial aspects of the Book of Jubilees is its emphasis that the world should follow the solar calendar, not the lunar calendar adopted by many ancient cultures, including the Israelites. According to Jubilees, the solar calendar is the only correct way to measure time because it aligns perfectly with God's divine order. The book explains that the solar year consists of 364 days, divided into 52 perfect weeks. Each season, spring, summer, autumn, and winter, contains exactly 13 weeks or 91 days. This system ensures that the Sabbath and other holy festivals are always observed on the correct days of the year. The solar calendar described in Jubilees is strikingly similar to the Ethiopian calendar, which is still used by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church to this day. The Ethiopian year is divided into 13 months, 12 months of 30 days each, with an additional month called Pagum, consisting of 5 or 6 days to account for the difference. Could it be that the Ethiopian calendar is one of the few modern systems still reflecting the sacred time described in Jubilees? In contrast, the lunar calendar, adopted by many cultures in the ancient world, including the Israelites, is seen as a corruption of this divine order. The lunar calendar is irregular, causing months and festivals to shift over time, and Jubilees warns that this deviation from the solar calendar leads to spiritual chaos. There will be those who will surely observe the moon, but they will disturb the seasons and create an abominable day. Jubilees 6, verse 37. For Jubilees, following the lunar calendar is not just a mistake, it is a form of disobedience to God's will. The book argues that by returning to the solar calendar, humanity could realign itself with the sacred rhythm established at the creation of the world. The book of Jubilees reaffirms the traditional six-day creation story found in Genesis, but goes deeper into the first Sabbath day. According to Jubilees, God did not simply rest on the seventh day. He sanctified it as a divine institution, an eternal law given to both humans and angels. The Sabbath is seen as the foundation of time, a day set apart from the very beginning of creation and meant to be observed forever. This concept of the Sabbath as a cosmic principle is central to Jubilees. It not only governs the weekly cycle, but is also tied to the larger structure of time, including Jubilee cycles lasting 49 years. These cycles were meant to bring the world back into harmony with God's order, offering times of rest, release, and renewal for the land, people, and even the angelic realm. For he sanctified the seventh day and blessed it for all ages as a sign of holiness for all his works. Jubilees 2 verse 21. The emphasis on the Sabbath as an eternal law shows that Jubilees is not just retelling the Genesis story, it is revealing the hidden meaning behind the cycles of time that govern all of creation. The book of Jubilees tells us that Adam was created on the sixth day, just like in Genesis, but it adds a whole new layer to his story. According to Jubilees, after creating Adam, God gave him specific commandments from the very beginning. Laws that included observing the Sabbath, rules of purity, and regulations regarding marriage and worship. These laws, conveyed by angels, were meant for Adam and his descendants to follow as part of the covenant that God established with humanity. While Genesis mentions God's direct interactions with Adam, Jubilees introduces the angels as intermediaries who taught Adam how to obey God's commandments. These angels, especially those referred to as the angels of the presence, ensured that Adam and Eve understood the laws of holiness, sacrifice, and moral behavior. And on the sixth day of the second week, according to the word of God, we brought to Adam all the beasts, all the cattle, all the birds, and everything that moves on the earth, and everything that moves in the water, each according to its kind. The beasts on the first day, the cattle on the second day, the birds on the third day, everything that moves on the earth on the fourth day, and whatever moves in the water on the fifth day. Jubilees 3:1-2. This interaction with angels reinforces the idea that God's laws were not human inventions, but part of the heavenly order. The angels taught Adam that he must observe God's laws as an eternal covenant, just as they obeyed the same laws in the heavenly realm. Could it be that God's laws, passed down through the angels, were given to humanity long before Moses received the 10 Commandments? And what can we learn from these ancient commandments? If you're curious about the laws God gave to Adam and how they compare to the laws of Moses, let us know in the comments. Should we dive deeper into the ancient commandments handed down from the earliest days of creation? After the fall of Adam and Eve, Jubilees adds a new perspective to the story of their children, Cain and Abel. While Genesis tells us that Cain killed Abel, the book of Jubilees provides additional details about what happened afterward. The murder of Abel is considered the first major violation of God's law, a sin that carried spiritual consequences for all of humanity. However, while Cain was exiled, Jubilees emphasizes that the righteous lineage of humanity continued through Seth, Adam's third son. In Jubilees, Seth is portrayed as a righteous figure taught to follow the commandments passed down by the angels. This sets the stage for later descendants, including Noah, to continue the covenant with God. The story of Noah and the great flood is widely known from Genesis, but the book of Jubilees offers further revelations about what happened before and after the flood. In Jubilees, the focus is not only on Noah's survival, but also on the covenant God established with him afterward. A covenant that emphasized the importance of purity, righteousness, and obedience to God's laws. Before the flood, Jubilees delves deeper into the corruption of the earth, especially focusing on the Nephilim, the offspring of fallen angels and human women. While Genesis 6:1-4 briefly mentions the Nephilim, Jubilees provides more context, showing how these giants contributed to the wickedness that led God to cleanse the earth with the flood. Would you like to explore the story of the Nephilim and the ancient secrets behind the Great Flood in more detail? Let us know if you'd like us to uncover more mysteries hidden in the Book of Jubilees. And lawlessness increased on the earth, and all flesh corrupted its way. Both humans, beasts, cattle, birds, and everything that moves on the earth, all of them corrupted their ways and their order, and they began to devour one another. This moral corruption was not only caused by human sin, but also by the influence of the fallen angels, who introduced forbidden knowledge and corrupted the natural order. God's response was swift. He sent the great flood to wipe out this corruption, but he preserved Noah and his family because of their righteousness. A new covenant after the flood. After the flood, Jubilees reveals that God not only promised never to bring another flood upon the earth, but also established a new covenant with Noah, which included specific laws on purity and sacrifice. These laws, later passed down to the Israelites, were meant to help humanity maintain holiness and avoid the corruption that had led to the flood. A significant detail in Jubilees is that Noah was commanded to observe the Sabbath and follow the same laws of sacrifice and purity that had been given to Adam. This implies that God's laws existed long before Moses and were part of the divine order from the very beginning. Abraham the idol destroyer. In Genesis 12, we meet Abraham when God calls him to leave his homeland for Canaan. However, Jubilees takes us further back to Abraham's youth, offering a completely new dimension to his story. According to Jubilees, Abraham grew up in a family immersed in idol worship. His father, Terah, served false gods. This detail is not mentioned in Genesis, but Jubilees paints a vivid picture of a young Abraham who rejected the pagan practices around him and chose to follow the one true God. And he said, "Father, show me what these idols are that you worship." And Abraham saw that they were stone figures. Abraham burned them before everyone and fled into the wilderness. Jubilees 11:16-17. While Genesis highlights Abraham's obedience to God's call, Jubilees portrays him as a revolutionary figure, one who boldly destroyed idols in his father's house and stood against the widespread idolatry of his time. Are these ancient laws still relevant today? This raises a profound question. Could the ancient laws given to Adam, Noah, and Abraham help us restore harmony with the divine order in our modern world? Is the disregard for sacred time cycles one of the reasons for the chaos we see today? Let us know in the comments if you'd like us to explore more about the hidden commandments and sacred cycles preserved in the Book of Jubilees. This spiritual rebellion laid the foundation for Abraham's later role as the father of the chosen people, those who would reject pagan practices and follow God's laws. One of the most striking differences between Genesis and the Book of Jubilees is the idea that Abraham observed God's laws long before Moses was born. In Genesis, there is no mention of Abraham receiving the law, except for the covenant of circumcision in Genesis 17. However, in Jubilees, Abraham is depicted as someone who observed the Sabbath, performed sacrifices, and followed other laws usually associated with Moses. According to Jubilees, these laws were not invented in the time of Moses. They were passed down from the angels to the patriarchs, beginning with Adam. Abraham received these commandments from the angels and was expected to follow them as part of his covenant relationship with God. The angels taught him what was written on the heavenly tablet. Unlike Genesis, where Abraham's actions are seen as part of his personal journey of faith, Jubilees presents him as part of a cosmic plan. He is guided by angels, and the laws he follows are part of the divine order that governs both heaven and earth. These laws include the Sabbath and many other purity laws that Moses would later formalize. Circumcision, a universal law. The covenant of circumcision is one of the most significant moments in Abraham's story. In Genesis 17, God commands Abraham to circumcise himself and all the males in his household as a sign of the covenant. But Jubilees goes even further, revealing that this act was not merely symbolic. It was part of a universal law written on the heavenly tablets. According to Jubilees, circumcision was not just a sign for Abraham's descendants. It was a divine law that existed from the creation of the world. And there was no circumcision in those days, and no one was circumcised in the flesh. But God established it as an eternal ordinance written on the heavenly tablets. Jubilee's hidden laws from the beginning of time? This revelation raises profound questions. Did God's laws exist long before Moses? Were the patriarchs following divine instructions that most of humanity has forgotten? Could the heavenly tablets still hold secrets about our future? Let us know if you'd like to dive deeper into the hidden laws of creation preserved in the Book of Jubilees. The divine order and the trial of faith, a cosmic perspective on Abraham's journey. In the book of Genesis, the primary focus is on Abraham's obedience to God's command. However, the book of Jubilees presents this act as part of a much greater divine order. Circumcision is not merely a physical sign, it is a way to align oneself with the cosmic laws that govern the universe. One of the most powerful moments in Genesis is the binding of Isaac, also known as the Genesis 22, 1-19, where God tests Abraham's faith by asking him to sacrifice his son Isaac. Jubilees retells this story with additional layers of depth. In Jubilees, this trial is not merely between Abraham and God, it is part of a greater spiritual battle. According to Jubilees, the angel Mastema, a figure often associated with Satan, was the one who suggested this trial to God, hoping that Abraham would fail. Mastema represents the forces of evil, constantly seeking to undermine the righteous. The book of Jubilees adds that angels intervened during the binding, and God allowed the test to prove that Abraham's faith was greater than the temptations of evil. And I stood before him and before the prince Mastema, and the Lord said, "Command him not to lay his hand upon the child, nor do anything to him, for I have shown that he fears the Lord." 10. This version of the story introduces an entirely new level of spiritual meaning. It is not just a test of Abraham's obedience, it is part of a cosmic struggle between good and evil. Mastema seeks to lead Abraham to failure, but God's intervention demonstrates that faithfulness will always triumph over darkness. In Genesis, the story focuses on Abraham's personal trial. However, in Jubilees, it becomes a spiritual battle involving angelic forces and the eternal struggle between good and evil. In Genesis 25:23, we are told that before Jacob and Esau were born, God revealed to their mother, Rebekah, that the two brothers would become leaders of two nations, and that the older brother, Esau, would serve the younger, Jacob. Jubilees expands on this prophecy, emphasizing that this was not just a family rivalry. It was part of a cosmic design, in which Jacob was always destined to inherit the blessing and continue the line of righteousness that began with Abraham. This perspective shifts the way we understand these ancient stories. They are not merely about individual choices and personal faith. They are part of a divine plan, a universal battle, and a sacred destiny that continues to unfold throughout history. The predestined conflict, Jacob and Esau in the Book of Jubilees. The Book of Jubilees introduces a profound layer of predestination, revealing that Jacob was chosen from birth to fulfill the covenant, while Esau was destined to stray from God's plan. The book even notes that Isaac and Rebekah were given divine knowledge of Esau's rebellious nature and the opposition his descendants would later pose to Israel. And the Lord said to her, "Two nations shall be divided from your womb, and one nation shall be stronger than the other, and the elder shall serve the younger." Jubilees 9. This prophecy parallels the verse in Genesis 25:23. "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." In Genesis, this struggle unfolds through Jacob's deception and Esau's impulsiveness. However, Jubilees explains that Jacob was always destined to inherit the birthright, and that his actions, though deceptive, were part of fulfilling the divine plan. One of the key differences in Jubilees is its portrayal of Esau. He is not merely an older brother who lost his birthright, but a symbol of a rebellious lineage opposed to God's chosen people. His descendants are depicted as a nation that would rise against Israel, fulfilling the prophecy that the elder would serve the younger. While Genesis mentions the hostility between Esau and Jacob following the incidents of the birthright and blessing, Genesis 27:41, Jubilees expands on this theme, showing how Esau's descendants would become a nation in direct conflict with the line of Jacob, the future Israelites. Esau took his wives, sons, and all that he had and went up to the hill country of Seir and lived there. Esau became a nation, and they oppressed the children of Jacob. Jubilees 37:1. This rebellion is not simply personal, it is national and cosmic, reflecting the ongoing spiritual battle between righteousness, Jacob, and rebellion, Esau. One of the most pivotal moments in Jacob's life is receiving his father Isaac's blessing in Genesis 27. This blessing secures Jacob's role as the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. However, Jubilees goes further, emphasizing that Jacob not only received the blessing, but also inherited the sacred laws passed down from Abraham. According to Jubilees, these laws, such as the Sabbath, purity laws, and sacrifices, were not given for the first time to Moses, but were part of a divine tradition carried down by the patriarchs. Jacob's acceptance of these laws marks him as a guardian of the covenant, entrusted with upholding the cosmic order. The book of Jubilees transforms the stories of Genesis from individual family dramas into a universal struggle between good and evil. Every action, every rivalry, and every blessing is part of a greater spiritual plan, reminding us that behind human history lies a divine design, one that shapes both nations and the destiny of the world. The divine legacy of Jacob in the book of Jubilees. According to the book of Jubilees, after Jacob received his blessing, God and the angels revealed to him the sacred laws that he and his descendants must follow. These laws encompass the observance of the Sabbath, purity regulations, and the celestial calendar, laws that would later be formalized in the Mosaic Law. Jacob is portrayed as the guardian of these laws, entrusted with ensuring that his offspring, the future Israelites, would uphold them as part of their covenantal relationship with God. And the Lord appeared to him in the night and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. I give to you and your descendants the land on which you are sleeping, and your descendants will be as numerous as the stars in the heavens. Jubilees 27:23, Genesis 28:1, 12:15. And in the vision of the ladder and God's promise to Jacob, the laws he received were part of the cosmic order governing both heaven and earth. This emphasis on Jacob as the inheritor of the divine laws elevates his role beyond simply receiving the birthright. He becomes the protector of God's eternal commandments, linking him to the heavenly tablets referenced earlier in Jubilees. Jubilees does not merely present the rivalry between Jacob and Esau as a familial dispute. It expands this conflict into a prophetic vision of the ongoing struggle between their descendants. The book suggests that the nations arising from Esau would continually oppose the children of Jacob, the Israelites, throughout history. This goes beyond a personal feud and ties into the concept of a spiritual battle between righteousness, Jacob Israel, and rebellion, Esau Edom. In Jubilees, this prophetic struggle is not just about territorial disputes. It is part of a larger cosmic war between the forces of good and evil. The lineage of Esau represents nations that would become the enemies of God's chosen people, and this tension persists throughout biblical history. This spiritual opposition plays a crucial role in the apocalyptic vision of Jubilees, linking the conflict to the end times. And Jacob and his sons went down to Egypt with Joseph, and the sons of Esau remained in the land of Edom. And from that day, the enmity between the nations remained. Jubilees 45 verse 3, Genesis 33 verse 16. Thus Esau began his journey to Seir, a symbolic moment marking the start of a spiritual struggle that would continue through generations. This vision of an ongoing conflict reflects the broader themes of Jubilees, where the story of the patriarchs becomes part of a greater cosmic plan, one that involves not only the family of Abraham, but also the destiny of nations and the ultimate battle between good and evil. In Genesis, we witness the birth of Jacob's 12 sons through his wives Leah and Rachel and their maidservants. These 12 sons, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin, become the founders of the 12 tribes of Israel. However, Jubilees adds a layer of divine order to their birth, showing that their arrival was not merely the result of human relationships, but part of a predestined plan orchestrated by God. Jacob's lineage represents more than just a family. It symbolizes the unfolding of God's covenant and the establishment of a holy nation. His obedience and faithfulness positioned him as the guardian of sacred traditions, ensuring that the divine laws passed down from Abraham would shape the destiny of Israel and the world. The book of Jubilees transforms the story of Jacob from a tale of human rivalry into a profound spiritual narrative, one where every blessing, every struggle, and every generation plays a role in the cosmic battle between light and darkness. This vision reminds us that history is not merely a sequence of events, but a divine tapestry woven by the hand of God, guiding creation toward its ultimate destiny. The predestined births and divine roles in the book of Jubilees. According to the book of Jubilees, the timing and order of the births of Jacob's sons were divinely orchestrated to align with the celestial calendar. The book emphasizes that each son was born according to the sacred timetable set by God, making their births part of a greater cosmic plan. And the wives and maidservants of Jacob bore him 12 sons, each one at the appointed time set by the Lord, and their destinies were written on the heavenly tablets. Jubilees 28, verse 12. Genesis 29, verse 31 to 34. While the book of Genesis focuses on the narrative events surrounding the birth of these sons, Jubilees highlights that their births were recorded on the heavenly tablets, reinforcing the idea that the 12 tribes of Israel were not the result of human will alone, but part of God's predestined plan for the world. One of the most significant moments in Genesis is the story of Reuben, Jacob's firstborn son, who lost his birthright after committing a grievous sin, Genesis 35, verse 22. Jubilees expands on this event, emphasizing the spiritual consequences of Reuben's actions and explaining why Judah and Levi rose to prominence in his place. In Jubilees, Reuben's sin is seen as a violation of the divine laws established long before, recorded on the heavenly tablets. His action was not merely a personal failure, but a spiritual transgression that disqualified him from leading the tribes. This allowed Judah, the fourth son, to rise as the leader of the brothers, while Levi was chosen for the priestly lineage, reflecting God's eternal plan. The book also offers a unique perspective on Joseph, whose life is depicted not only as a journey of perseverance, but as a part of the divine cosmic order. While Genesis portrays Joseph's connection with God through dreams, Jubilees goes further by introducing the role of angels in his story. According to Jubilees, the angels were actively involved in guiding and protecting Joseph throughout his trials. This angelic support highlights Joseph's significance in the larger cosmic framework, showing that he was not merely a remarkable individual, but a divinely chosen instrument to fulfill God's purpose. In summary, the book of Jubilees provides a deeper understanding of the roles of Levi and Joseph, framing them within an eternal cosmic order established by God. While Genesis recounts their personal stories and struggles, Jubilees reveals that their actions were integral parts of the ongoing divine plan for Israel. This vision transforms the patriarchal narratives into a profound spiritual drama, where each event and each life contributes to the unfolding destiny of God's chosen people. The divine role of Joseph in the book of Jubilees, a cosmic destiny, through its emphasis on the heavenly tablets and the cosmic implications of human actions, the book of Jubilees invites readers to perceive the connection between historical events and their significance in the spiritual destiny of God's people. Joseph's life is not merely a tale of personal perseverance, but an essential element in God's plan, established from the very beginning. While the book of Genesis highlights Joseph's relationship with God through his dreams, Jubilees expands this vision by introducing the active role of angels in guiding and protecting Joseph throughout his journey. The book describes how angels were sent by God to watch over Joseph from the moment he was sold into slavery, ensuring that he would fulfill his destiny in Egypt. And the Lord sent his angels to guard Joseph on his journey to Egypt, that he might not perish, for his life was precious in the sight of the Lord, and his path had been written on the heavenly tablets. This unique detail adds a spiritual layer of protection to Joseph's story that is absent in Genesis. It reveals that Joseph's journey was not simply a series of fortunate events. Rather, his path was carefully orchestrated by God, with angels ensuring that he would rise to power and ultimately save his family. One of the most significant differences between Genesis and Jubilees is how Joseph's life is linked to the exodus of Israel. In Genesis, Joseph's role ends with his family settling in Egypt. However, Jubilees portrays Joseph's life as a prophetic foreshadowing of Israel's future slavery and ultimate deliverance. According to Jubilees, Joseph's rise to power in Egypt was not only to save his family from famine, but to fulfill a prophecy that would lead to the Exodus. The book explains that Joseph was aware of his descendants' future bondage and played a role in preparing them for their eventual liberation. By framing Joseph's life within this cosmic and prophetic context, Jubilees transforms his story into more than just an example of personal triumph. It becomes a key chapter in God's eternal plan, demonstrating that even in times of suffering, God's providence is at work, guiding his chosen people toward their ultimate redemption. Joseph and the prophetic destiny of Israel in the book of Jubilees. Joseph said to his brothers, "I will die, but God will surely visit you and bring you out of this land to the land which he swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Do not fear, for these things have been written and sealed on the heavenly tablets." Jubilees 46. This prophetic element is not emphasized in the book of Genesis, where Joseph's death marks the conclusion of his story. However, in the book of Jubilees, Joseph's death is not an ending, but a transition, the beginning of Israel's enslavement, and a prophetic promise that they would one day be delivered from Egypt. This vision ties Joseph's life directly to God's cosmic plan of redemption, which would be fulfilled through the Exodus. In Genesis, Israel's slavery begins when a new Pharaoh rises to power who did not know Joseph and begins to oppress the Israelites. Exodus 1:8-14. However, in Jubilees, this period of enslavement is not simply a result of political changes. It is part of a divine prophecy already recorded on the heavenly tablets long before it happened. According to Jubilees, God foretold Israel's bondage as part of his plan to lead them into the Exodus and give them the Mosaic Law. This prophetic plan is directly connected to Joseph's role in bringing Israel to Egypt in the first place. While Joseph saved Israel from famine, their time in Egypt was predestined to end in slavery, an essential chapter in the larger spiritual story of God's chosen people. And it was written on the heavenly tablets that they would be oppressed in Egypt, and that the Lord would bring them out by great power and mighty wonders, that his name might be glorified. This perspective transforms Israel's time in Egypt into more than just a historical event. It becomes part of a greater cosmic narrative, where both their suffering and their eventual deliverance were preordained for the glory of God. The book of Jubilees presents Joseph not only as a wise and faithful leader, but as a key figure in God's eternal plan, whose life and death were woven into the divine purpose of redeeming his people. The cosmic struggle and divine timing of the Exodus in the book of Jubilees. The suffering of the Israelites is framed not merely as oppression, but as a necessary trial to prepare them for receiving the law at Mount Sinai. In the book of Exodus, God acts directly to bring about the plagues and deliver Israel from Pharaoh's oppression. Exodus 7-12. However, the book of Jubilees adds another dimension to this narrative by introducing spiritual warfare, where angels play a central role in the cosmic conflict between God and Pharaoh. According to Jubilees, the oppression of Israel was part of a larger spiritual battle between the forces of good and evil. Masta, a figure often associated with Satan, is portrayed as the one who actively hardens Pharaoh's heart and increases the suffering of Israel. Masta and his demonic spirits are described as encouraging the Egyptians to oppress the Israelites even more harshly, testing their loyalty to God. King Masta stood against them, seeking to destroy them with harsh slavery and to make them abandon their faith in the Lord. In this way, Jubilees adds a cosmic dimension to Israel's slavery, showing that the conflict was not only a matter of political power, but that spiritual forces were working to undermine God's plan for Israel's deliverance. The Egyptian plagues were not just acts of judgment, but part of a larger cosmic battle, with Masta attempting to prevent the Exodus. Central to the book of Jubilees is the role of the heavenly tablets, which explain how both the laws and the timing of the Exodus were part of God's eternal plan. According to Jubilees, the Exodus was not simply a response to Israel's suffering. It was a carefully predestined event, calculated according to the divine calendar written on the heavenly tablets. The book emphasizes that the timing of the Exodus was tied to the observance of sacred laws, and that Israel's deliverance was meant to bring them into alignment with the divine order. This perspective presents the Exodus as more than a historical liberation. It was the fulfillment of a cosmic prophecy where every event unfolded according to God's eternal design. The predestined Exodus and the cosmic order in the book of Jubilees. The book of Jubilees explains that Israel's time in Egypt, their suffering, and their moment of deliverance were all predestined, and that God's actions aligned perfectly with the cosmic timeline. And it was written on the heavenly tablets that on the 14th day of the first month at the appointed time, the Lord would bring Israel out of Egypt, for this is the day appointed from the beginning of creation. Jubilees 49, verse 1. This unique detail is found only in Jubilees. While the book of Exodus focuses on the events surrounding the plagues and the Exodus, Jubilees introduces the idea that the timing of the Exodus is a key element of God's divine plan, established from the very beginning. The Exodus is not portrayed merely as a historical event, but as part of the spiritual framework of creation, tied to the predestined cosmic calendar. The 10 plagues in Exodus, Exodus 7 to 12, serve as powerful displays of God's might sent to force Pharaoh to release the Israelites. However, in Jubilees, the plagues carry cosmic significance, not just divine punishments, but symbolic acts representing the defeat of Egypt's gods and the spiritual forces behind them. Jubilees explains that each plague was designed to weaken the false gods of Egypt, proving that only the God of Israel holds true power over heaven and earth. The Lord sent the plagues upon Egypt not only to judge Pharaoh, but to show that the gods of Egypt are nothing before him, for they are false powers that cannot stand before the Almighty. Jubilees 48:11. From this perspective, the plagues become part of a larger cosmic battle between good and evil, where the God of Israel defeats both the material and spiritual forces of Egypt. Jubilees also reveals that Mima, another name for Satan, was working behind the scenes, trying to prevent Pharaoh from freeing Israel, but God's power overcomes him at every turn. In Exodus, Moses receives the law directly from God on Mount Sinai, but Jubilees adds that these laws were not created at that moment. They had been engraved on the heavenly tablets long before Moses' time. According to Jubilees, the heavenly tablets are essentially a cosmic record of all God's laws, established from the very beginning of creation, serving as a guide for both angels and humanity. Jubilees emphasizes that Moses was merely the receiver of laws that had been predestined for all generations, further reinforcing the idea that the entire history of Israel, its suffering, deliverance, and covenant, was part of God's eternal plan. The eternal law and cosmic order in the book of Jubilees. Therefore, the law of Moses is not merely a set of rules for the people of Israel. It is part of the divine order that governs the entire universe. This means that the laws given to Moses were always meant to be revealed, and their timing aligns perfectly with God's cosmic calendar. The law and the testimony were ordained and written on the heavenly tablets, created even before the world was formed, so that they might guide all the generations of the children of Israel. Jubilees 6:17. While the book of Exodus emphasizes the dramatic revelation of the law at Mount Sinai, Jubilees presents it as part of a cosmic plan. The laws were already inscribed in heaven, waiting for the appointed time to be revealed to Moses and the people of Israel. One of the most fascinating aspects of Jubilees is its claim that the law of Moses was observed long before Moses himself. The traditional Bible portrays Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as righteous individuals, but does not specify that they were given the full law. However, Jubilees boldly declares that the patriarchs followed the Sabbath, offered sacrifices, and observed many commandments long before they were formally given at Sinai. This makes the law of Moses not a new development, but rather the restoration of eternal laws passed down from the beginning of time. The patriarchs received these commandments through divine revelation and angelic instruction. For example, Abraham is depicted as observing the Sabbath laws and dietary regulations long before they were officially given to Israel. And he kept the Sabbath, circumcised his son, and followed the commandments of the Lord that were written on the heavenly tablets. And the law was revealed to him through the angels of the Lord. Jubilees 16. In this way, Jubilees presents the law as an eternal code given to all the righteous from Adam onward. Moses was simply the chosen vessel to deliver it in its complete form to the nation of Israel. One of the most unique contributions of Jubilees to the Mosaic Law is its emphasis on the cosmic calendar. In Jubilees, the observance of time, especially the Sabbath, festivals, and Jubilee years, is central to the divine order. These timekeeping laws are presented as part of the heavenly tablets, and observing them is seen as a way to align with the sacred rhythm of the universe. By following this cosmic schedule, Israel not only obeys God's commands, but also participates in the divine harmony that underlies all creation, a profound vision that ties human obedience to the very fabric of the universe. The cosmic calendar and eternal law in the book of Jubilees. In the book of Jubilees, the solar calendar is emphasized over the lunar calendar, with a year consisting of 364 days. This system is regarded as the correct way to observe God's commandments, ensuring that all festivals and Sabbaths fall on their appointed days. Jubilees warns that deviating from this divine calendar could lead to spiritual disorder, which is why the laws of timekeeping are at the heart of the Mosaic Law. And the Lord spoke to Moses and said, "Write down for Israel the laws regarding the Sabbath and the festivals, for these times have been ordained on the heavenly tablets, and you must observe them precisely, lest you fall into error." Jubilees 5:2. This focus on the cosmic calendar does not appear prominently in the traditional Bible, where the Sabbath and festivals are mentioned, but without emphasizing their cosmic origins. Jubilees highlights that following this calendar is the key to maintaining God's favor, as it aligns human life with the divine plan. While the Mosaic Law in the Bible was given specifically to Israel, Jubilees presents these laws as eternal and binding, not only for Israel, but for all generations, and even the heavenly beings. The book stresses that the laws written on the heavenly tablets are not temporary guidelines for one nation, but everlasting commandments governing both heaven and earth. In Jubilees, the laws given to Moses are meant to be followed by all of God's creation, including the angels, who are depicted as keeping the Sabbath and observing God's festivals in heaven. This elevates the Mosaic Law into a universal order, a system that extends beyond humanity and binds both the spiritual and material worlds into God's cosmic structure. The angels keep the Sabbath, and the righteous will observe the commandments forever. Jubilees 50. This idea of eternal law is not made explicit in the traditional Bible, which focuses on the covenant between God and Israel. However, in Jubilees, the law is portrayed as part of the cosmic framework, binding both angels and humans to the divine rhythm of the universe. According to Jubilees, Israel's future is not left to chance. It is part of a predestined timeline ordained by God, written on the heavenly tablets since the very beginning of time. This vision transforms the story of Israel from a national narrative into a cosmic drama where human history unfolds according to the eternal design of the Creator, the predestined timeline, and the role of angels in the Book of Jubilees. This cosmic timeline outlines the rise and fall of nations, the exile and return of Israel, and the final judgment that will come upon the world. Everything that happens in human history, from creation to the final judgment, follows the divine schedule recorded in heaven. One of the unique features of the Book of Jubilees is its emphasis that these events are predestined and nothing occurs outside of God's divine plan. The book offers a prophetic overview of Israel's journey, explaining that their exile, suffering, and restoration are all written in the heavenly records and must unfold according to the divine calendar. All that will happen to Israel is written on the heavenly tablets, from their rebellion to their redemption, and the appointed time for their deliverance has been fixed long ago. Jubilees 23:32. While Genesis and Exodus focus on specific historical events of Israel, Jubilees provides a broader perspective, revealing that Israel's destiny is part of a greater cosmic plan that has been predetermined since the beginning. A significant theme in Jubilees is the role of angels throughout Israel's history, but their involvement becomes even more crucial during the end times. In Jubilees, the angels of God are entrusted with executing God's judgment upon the nations, ensuring that His divine will is carried out both in heaven and on earth. As the end of time approaches, Jubilees describes how the angels will descend to separate the righteous from the wicked, gathering those who have remained faithful to God's commandments. The book also introduces the idea that Medema, the leader of demonic spirits, will be bound and cast into the abyss, symbolizing the final defeat of the forces of darkness. And the Lord will send His angels to gather His chosen ones, and they will bind the prince of the spirits of demons and cast him into the abyss until the time of judgment, when he will be destroyed forever. Jubilees 23:29. This portrayal of angels as agents of divine justice adds a unique layer to the prophecy of the end times, reinforcing the idea that the entire universe, both seen and unseen, operates according to the predestined order established by God.